Hey everyone, welcome back to the pod. Today we are talking about how to design for product led growth. So, we'll cover understanding PLG, why it's a game changer, who benefits from it, the anatomy of a growth loop, and value creation success metrics. So let's dive right into it. If you're not applying PLG, you might have a problem. The market is shifting really rapidly, and it's more about impact players, not contributors. Understanding PLG and growth design is a necessity. The hiring numbers speak for itself. Growth is now the number one fastest growing role in tech. Companies are driven by a need for capital efficiency, something investors and public markets are increasingly prioritizing. LinkedIn also listed growth as a top skill for 2025, and this means that companies are hungry for growth-minded talent. Product-led growth is overtaking traditional roles. Your beautiful UI won't matter if it doesn't drive business results, and the AI explosion means designers need to upskill. This year, I've actually already gotten a handful of requests from recruiters looking for growth designers within my network. So, in general, I think growth hacking is deeply misunderstood. There's a difference between what people think it is versus what it actually is. For example, the other day I mentioned to a friend that I was teaching a growth course, and he was like, "Oh, you mean marketing?" And I was like, "No, it's growth design." So, product people, of course, also use growth, but don't worry if you're confused about what PLG is, because we are going to start from the top. So, PLG is a go-to-market strategy that relies on product excellence, period. It's maintaining a healthy stream of existing and new customers through the product. And this means that you let your product's excellence do the heavy lifting to keep your customer base growing and healthy. Think of it as your product being so good that it sells itself. You might say, well, how else does a company grow? That's a good question. So traditionally, companies rely on things like sales-led growth, which is a bunch of salespeople pushing the product. You can think of complicated enterprise products, or marketing-led growth, which is heavy advertising and marketing campaigns. I think of booking. However, with each of these methods, if your product sucks, then you're going to lose customers anyways, and it defeats the purpose of acquiring them in the first place. And it probably becomes pretty damn expensive for the marketing team. And we'll call this the leaky bucket syndrome. You haven't built a solid container for your customers. Perhaps you've heard of Clubhouse or even downloaded it during COVID. This is an app that had incredible and explosive acquisition, but wasn't able to maintain that momentum through strong retention. And this is where PLG comes in. PLG flips the script and puts power in the user's hands. Instead of sales tactics, teams can watch how people actually use the product features and jump in to help at just the right moment. Think of sales teams more as product guides than traditional salespeople. They're there to understand goals, use cases, and help users unlock the product's full potential. Teams can even score leads based on the usage of product features. So the usage of product features can act as a guide for sales teams. There's a study by McKinsey & Company that shows that top PLG companies outperform peers and sales-led players. However, PLG is challenging to master, and only a select few companies have really mastered it, but we can really see the benefit when it comes to their annual recurring revenue growth. So originally, PLG emerged from SaaS companies like Dropbox, Slack, and Zoom. Let's take Figma's PLG as an example. So if you don't know, Figma is a design tool, but if you're listening to this, chances are 50-50 that you're a product designer. So Figma is a collaboration-based design tool with a few use cases: individual, team, and enterprise. PLG drives their growth strategy. Individuals can sign up for a free account and invite others to collaborate in their file. Individuals and businesses can self-serve to pay for upgraded access to more features, making monetization seamless. And team plan managers can also add users and manage payment completely self-served. Though PLG leads for individual adoption, Figma leverages sales for larger enterprise accounts. And I just want to address this misconception that PLG means that sales and marketing are unnecessary. Hopefully I cleared that up earlier, but clearly they work hand in hand. It's just that you're letting the product lead. So PLG, when done right, of course, is game-changing. Although designers are often neglected in the discussion of growth, I'd like to argue who better to make an incredible user experience. And you don't have product-led growth without an incredible user experience. If we think about what makes products like Notion or Slack viral, it's not aggressive sales tactics or flashy ads. It's intuitive design accomplishing a specific job that impresses users and encourages them to share with friends. At its core, PLG success relies on showing, not telling. And this is where your design expertise becomes your competitive edge. While designers are often overlooked in growth conversations, they're actually the architects of the aha moments that drive adoption. The good news is more companies are realizing this with the growth renaissance that's happening. And if you haven't seen, my Conscious Growth Design course was recently featured in Maven's Growth Collection. We're actually in the middle of a 2-week cohort right now. I've added in something new, which is the Hawaiian Pico framework, and this encourages ideation from a generational lens that balances profit and purpose. So if you're interested in that, then go check out my Conscious Growth Design course. I also have a free 5-day course if you want to just kind of test the waters or figure out if this is even right for you. If you want to learn more about this, I also write about it quite a lot on the Conscious Tech newsletter that I have. That is linked in the show notes. I'm curious if you think design is for everyone. I'm going to say that it is. Design is for everyone. And the reason that I say that is design thinking can't be limited to designers on a team that wants to create the best products in the world. Design is also a practice, and everything we do, whether that's in our life or work, is designed. When it comes to PLG, product managers craft user interviews and analyze usage data to identify unmet needs. Engineers brainstorm multiple technical approaches that balance user needs with performance. And data analysts identify patterns in user behavior that signal frustration or delight. The magic happens when design principles guide every touchpoint. So let's talk about 4 specific benefits of PLG: customer centricity, radical transparency, data democracy, and cost efficiency. The result of a combination of this is a virtuous cycle of happy customers and happy employees. Let's talk about each one. Customer centricity. People are allergic to advertising these days, and PLG puts customers in the driver's seat, letting them explore and fall in love with the product on their terms. Companies can create fans and increase word-of-mouth growth, which is really the gold standard. Then we have radical transparency. Everything's out in the open. Users know exactly what they're getting, especially with a freemium experience. On the flip side, instead of business decisions decided by management, PLG puts the power in the IC's hands: product, design, and engineering. 3 is data democratization. When data is accessible to everyone, it empowers teams to take action and speak with a shared language. Product development becomes laser-focused, guided by real user behavior and needs instead of grasping at straws. And I cannot tell you how many designers I have spoken to that don't get access to the data. And I think, what a waste. Okay, 4 is cost efficiency. Your marketing budget will thank you. Acquiring customers through product excellence is, of course, going to typically be more cost-effective than traditional methods. A company can also achieve high recurring revenue with a lower number of employees, and this is the shift that we are starting to see with startups: smaller, leaner teams. So the end result here, when done right, is that, as I mentioned, PLG creates a virtuous cycle where happy customers bring in more users and your product keeps getting better based on real feedback, and that is sustainable growth. So who benefits from a PLG motion? Because it's not for every company. SaaS companies are going to be a natural fit for PLG. That is because they have a few specific qualities. I'll share 4 criteria. And if you ask yourself these questions, you can qualify on your own if your company has a PLG motion, or perhaps if it's a good fit for a PLG motion. So the first criteria is going to be market momentum. Have you found product market fit? Because nothing in growth happens until you have PMF. Second, is your market large enough to support sustainable growth? The second criteria is the business model. Can users start for free and upgrade as they see value? For example, if you think of Slack's freemium model, is the path from free to paid as frictionless as creating an account and entering a credit card? Do you offer clear value tiers that grow with user needs? The third criteria is discovery. Can users find you through organic channels like word of mouth? Does your product create natural sharing moments? Is your content strategy educating and engaging potential users? Can users become advocates without incentives? And 4 is going to be the product itself. Does your product serve a recurring need? Do you offer a low level of product complexity? Can users experience their first aha moment within minutes? Can the core value proposition be understood through self-service? Okay, let's talk a little bit about leveraging growth loops. The purpose of a growth loop is compounding effects. So what was popular before is the AARRR framework, also known as the pirate metric, and that looks like acquisition, activation, retention, revenue, and referral. However, Reforge popularized the growth loop, and this takes that linear progression into a growth loop that creates a self-reinforcing cycle to drive sustainable growth. The growth loop is about compounding effects. So you still have these key points that I mentioned, but the idea is that they are now feeding into each other. So we have some sort of input, some sort of action that the user takes, and then some sort of output. Of course, that output then gets reinvested into the input. So if this is hard to visualize, I have some articles about this on Conscious Tech, so you can go check that out, where I also have images and real case studies from companies. The 3 phases look like 1, acquisition and activation, where a user discovers and signs up. They then experience their aha moment, right, which is activation. And the second step is engagement and monetization. So the user builds the product into their daily workflow. They then hit value limits and upgrade for more features, and this is monetization. 3 is the multiplier effect. This is where engaged users can invite teammates, which is more acquisition. Teams hit enterprise features, which drive sales, which is monetization. And then you have success stories that fuel organic growth, which is more acquisition. So if we think of an example, let's take Figma again. A designer signs up for Figma. The designer creates a file and they invite their teammates, and then the entire company adopts Figma, and then the PMs and engineers also start to use Figma. So if you remember anything from this episode, remember that the point of a loop instead of a funnel is the compound effect, and that's really what you want to take advantage of in your business strategy. This compound effect explains why some of the world's most successful tech companies like Figma, Notion, and Slack achieved rapid growth with minimal marketing. Their power users became their best acquisition channel. If you would like to learn more about PLG, I have this free 5-day growth course where you can also access 3 principles for PLG design based on real work that I have done with clients. I also walk you through the different design touch points. For example, sign up, activation, discovery, and so forth. I also talk about this in the lightning lesson that I did for Maven. So before we close out, I want to get you thinking a little bit about what sorts of success metrics you might consider. And it's worth noting, because I've gotten this question before in my class, that when you think about the right thing to measure, you should never start with the metric. It should always start with the project goal and then choose what metric makes sense within that. Revenue might make sense, for example, for another department, but as a product designer, we want to consider value creation metrics for PLG. Some of the metrics that you might consider, for example, for the first experience is onboarding completion. The aha moment might look like, would definitely look like activation rate. Value experience would be feature discovery, product usage, and time to value. Habit formation could be retention rate, time spent, or task completion. And expansion could be things like NPS, which is Net Promoter Score, or virality. These are ways that you can start understanding if your project was successful. All right, so the key takeaways here I want to leave you with so that you can start applying this to your work right away is to start with product excellence, not sales or marketing. 2 is going to be to focus on PLG after achieving solid retention. So if you listen to this and your product doesn't have solid retention, then now you know where to start. And 3 is going to be measure value creation metrics. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.